So we're back with another podcast. Me, Harmonia, and this time we've actually got a special guest here, Fermata. Say
Hello.
hi.
Hello.
Yep. So Fermata is actually a game designer himself. I don't know. We could say where you're a game designer at, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm an audio programmer over at Infinity Ward. So I've worked on I've only in the past year or so. So I worked a little bit on the most recent Call of Duty game, Modern Warfare 2, that came out, and and then helping to work out on some of the future titles, specifically in kind of more the audio space.
Mm-hmm. So way back when we started doing these podcasts, Fermata was actually planned to be part of our little group, but we decided, me and Harmonia, we should just test things out, test the bars a little bit to see if this is something we actually want to do, and
give it a good go.
Now that we've gotten our feet in the water, we're like, all right, now let's bring Fermata on for at least one time as a guest, because he's like someone who's very intelligent about game design. I think we're gonna have some pretty good discussions here. But this particular discussion, I want to talk about tension. So tension is basically just knowing that something will happen, but not knowing when. It has to be unpredictable, but like still kind of inevitable. I think a good example is horror, because like in a horror game, you bought a horror game, like you know it's going to be scary, but like you're walking down that hallway, you don't know when the jump is gonna come. You know it's going to come. Hell, it might not even come. They might play with that expectation a little bit, but you know it's coming eventually. I think another good example is like competition, like sports, because obviously one team is gonna win, but you're on the edge of the seat the whole time. If it's a good competition, then the tension is gonna be high. You don't know who's gonna win. Well, one of the things we were going to talk about today was like spoilers and how that kind of ruins the tension a little bit, because if you know the outcome already, there's not really going to be any tension, because there's no unpredictability. You can predict the outcome because you've been literally told the outcome, and how that can affect stories, now that can affect games. Because like spoiler culture has really blown up recently, like what, the last decade or so, I want to say.
Yeah, social media is really a big thing, especially stuff like Twitter, YouTube. It's very easy to just randomly come across stuff, whereas like 20 years ago or something, we'd have to go out of our way to like find stuff and find information about these new games. That might have been before you were born, say, but
Okay, buddy. Okay, buddy, you're not that much older than me.
Yeah, nowadays something like Tears of the Kingdom can come out, and a few days later you'll have YouTube thumbnails on your homepage that are endgame things, and it's like, come on, really?
They still do those?
Yeah, it happened to me.
For gaming and all that? Oh my god. I've been lucky enough not to see them.
Hate it when it happens.
Yeah, and they do it every time, and it's like, it's to the point where like you feel like you can't really talk about something that you just finished, because you don't want to spoil anybody. And you also, I always, whenever there's some like new story, like a movie or game coming out, people are always like, I'm just gonna stay off Twitter, I'm just gonna stay off social media, just to avoid spoilers
all the time.
But yeah, well, Fermata, you specifically wanted to talk about sports a little bit. What do you have to say?
So it is interesting, and I think you brought up like a lot of good points. And there's a lot of stuff that a lot of people commonly do: stay off social media, try to avoid these altogether. But there are also some ways in which I feel as though this idea of, I'll call it spoiler culture, even though it's not like fully accurate, I guess, it's swallowed a little bit too much in the opposite direction, where it's like the idea of knowing what's going to happen is going to inherently like ruin the experience. I don't necessarily think that's fully true, because I think there are some times where knowing what's going to happen maybe can enhance the experience, or it like doesn't detract from it. It's like the focus is not what's going to happen, but rather how we get to that point. And actually, one example I kind of wanted to bring up that's like not necessarily related to games, but maybe can give us a little bit of insight, is like old time like Shakespeare plays. Like this is like, so like back hundreds of years ago, right? Where like when a lot of these performances were given, like the narrator or like the person introducing the play, the performance, would actually tell the audience, this is how it's going to end. This is what's going to happen. You're about to watch a tragedy. Everyone dies at the end. The enjoyment of these performances isn't what's going to happen at the end, but rather how we get there, how the characters interact, the dialogue. There are a lot of these things that even now make them timeless classics, even though we essentially already know what's going to happen. So this is all to say that just because something is like spoiled, just because we know something is going to happen, doesn't necessarily take away from the experience that we can have, like experiencing it. In fact, I would even argue that something that
Mm.
can make something timeless, something like a feature that can make an experience a classic, is the fact that we can know what's going to happen and still
What?
get that full enjoyment out of
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah, because it's so good that the ending doesn't matter that much.
it. Yeah.
Like everything else is still amazing. It doesn't hinge on the ending.
Mhm.
I mean,
It's like-
yeah,
It's the road getting there that's important.
yeah. But I
Hmm.
mean, like, it can be a good thing because, like, when the ending is spoiled, you can stop focusing on, oh, what's gonna happen? How is this gonna end? It's like you can just sort of
Mhm.
focus on the performances and everything else. Like, but like in a mystery novel though, or something like
Oh
that,
yeah.
I feel like
Yeah, where you're
that
putting the
it kind of
pieces
hinges
together.
on the ending. Yeah, like I feel like in that case, it's kind of important. So it kind of depends case by
Yeah.
case.
Mhm.
Like, I don't know. I think in a Mario game, like if you got spoiled, that wouldn't be a big deal, you know?
Probably
Like it's
not.
fine.
Mhm. Yeah,
But
it can definitely depend on the type of story being told. One game that I recently finished that I'll do my best to describe without having, any spoilers for it was Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom.
wait a
And-
minute, the Harmonia spoilers make it better. No, I'm not doing that.
Like in both Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild have you going around the world to find memories of the past of things that have already happened. And the way that I found it in Breath of the Wild was it's just like, okay, just for the fun of knowing it so I can know what brought us here, but it doesn't really affect anything in the now, whether I know it or not. Whereas something that I much preferred in Tears of the Kingdom is the memories of the past actually helped you move forward in the present by solving these mysteries, by putting it together, by not having it spoiled, answering the big questions of where's the Master Sword, where's Zelda, and where the heck is Matt Mersendorf? Because the game doesn't tell you any of those things straight up. And as I was gathering the various memory cutscenes around the world and getting a little bit of an inkling of where these things might be, and then, getting far enough that the game eventually told me, I would be like, oh, that totally makes sense. And I'm really glad that I didn't have those things spoiled for me. So in a game like that is kind of about the fun of piecing together the mystery so that you can keep moving the present forward. If you have that kind of spoiled for you, then you don't have the fun of putting the pieces together yourself, Something that I experienced with that.
So, Fermata, I want to ask you: have you heard of? There's this study. This is gonna tie back into what you just said, Harmonia. I promise. There's this study in 2011, I think it was, that
Okay.
some spoilers actually enhance the enjoyment.
I have not seen the study or heard of it, but I'm curious. Like, do you have what other context do you have around it? Curious.
So what was it? I don't remember how many people it was, but a bunch of people were given different novels to read, and
Sure.
they were all different genres. Some were mystery novels, some were, what was it, ironic twist novels, and some were just novels where the story wasn't super important, or the plot wasn't super important, I should say. And across all of them, they all enjoyed it more after being spoiled. And like,
Interesting.
I was like, wait, how is that possible? I don't really
Maybe
consider that
depends on the
study.
story. I don't know.
Well, no, because across everything, they were all, well, maybe not every individual person, but generally across all the genres, people enjoyed it more after being spoiled. And I should say also, there was another group of people that wasn't spoiled. They read the same stories.
Interesting.
And I don't really think that study's the end all be all,
Yeah.
but it is interesting. So like, Fermata, are you saying that like spoilers can make it better in a lot of cases, or are you just saying that it's not the end of the world if you get spoiled?
It's not the end of the world. If I would posit a theory as for why that might happen,
Wait,
it's that
Wait, you cut out there.
let's see. So let's actually think of an example where let's say we're playing a game in general, like Dark Souls, for example, right? Dark Souls
Uh-huh.
is
Yeah.
notoriously
I
difficult.
think
as
you
we all
keep
know, right.
vanishing
And
for little
If
spans.
for someone,
yeah, you cut out
oh
a little
shoot,
bit.
okay, sorry,
Yeah.
I'll make sure I'm closer to my mic just to make sure. But if someone were to play Dark Souls or just any game in general, it's absurdly difficult, right? It's just too far beyond what the person might be capable of without sinking hours and hours of time into it, right? At that point,
Debatable.
the experience. Okay, for the
Well, it's an
general,
example.
for
It's
the
just an
average
example.
person,
Yeah.
as an example, right? If it's you're bashing your head into a wall and you're not making progress, it doesn't feel very fun. Usually, for most people.
Yeah. Players don't want
but-
something that feels impossible. They want something that feels
Yeah.
beatable.
I think something that a lot of players like is the feeling of progress. That every time you do it, you're getting closer to the goal.
Mhm.
And for example, if we go back to the study, for example, let's say a mystery novel, right? If you know how it ends, it makes the logic of piecing how everything happened a bit easier. It's essentially the equivalent of having a hint in a game or having like a little bit of a cheat code, where it's like, it makes it easier for me to understand how everything fits together because I know what the end point is. I know who did it. Now it's just a matter of connecting the beginning to end to see how they did it.
I would disagree.
Really?
Well,
I feel like it's not the feeling of progress that makes games so addictive, so hooking, but rather the denial of progress. Otherwise, everyone would just start every single player video game by loading up cheat engine and hacking in every single thing, and then they have everything. There's nothing to work for. The fun comes from actually being denied the progress, needing to work for, and then feeling accomplishment when you achieve these things that you've been striving for, rather than just getting everything purely for free.
If there's too much of that denial, then people will feel a lot more alienated. Yeah, there has to be this feeling of possible. There's this balance in between the two. You have to be making the progress, but it's not so easy where you just get it all at once.
Yeah.
Playing.
Yeah, I don't think what you said really contradicts what Fermata said. Like, they're still both true, in my opinion.
Yeah, as long as you find a good balance, I think. Yeah. I was just saying, on the context of spoilers, just having something handed to you from the beginning there, not needing to work for it, I feel like it can take away that feeling of reward of when the game would actually reveal it later on. It's like, hey, I worked to find out this information. Now it's, this information that is like, wow, I really worked for that. Like when I was playing Tears of the Kingdom and I found out the location of these various things. It's like, wow, I, really worked hard venturing across the world to find this information, and now I can go seek it out, even though I could have, just Googled the information whenever I wanted.
So Fermata, about that, I agree. It can change your experience a lot, but like the thing is, that's kind of like the experience you would have if you're replaying something. And it's like now that you've been spoiled, you're never gonna have the experience of playing it for the first time again. It's like you're on a replay through on your first playthrough.
Sure.
You've taken away that one-time experience that you'd never be able to have again.
Yeah, not that experience is necessarily better, but it's just gone forever now. Like, you're never gonna experience it the way it was originally intended.
True.
And
that's true.
That's kind of, I guess, my counter argument, because I do ultimately agree with you that spoilers are not the end all be all. They're not the end of the world. But I think generally you still shouldn't spoil people, because ultimately it's like, if they don't want to be spoiled, they just shouldn't be.
And none of this is to say that we should be assholes and go out of our way to tell people how games end. That's not what
Snape
this
kills
is meant
Dumbledore?
to be. Wait, what?
Bro,
wow.
I think that's the thing that started spoiler culture, isn't it?
Well, people going around yelling that at lineups for bookstores and stuff like that when that book came out?
Yeah, because people were just saying it out of nowhere, and everyone was like, all right, you can't say anything about this book. Just don't say anything.
Yeah.
See, and when was that? I think that was like 2004, 2005 or something? I don't know.
I could look it up.
Yeah, I'll say, when did Half-Blood Prince come out?
It was like, I think it was mid to late 2000s, no? I might be wrong.
Looking it up here.
Movie.
July 16,
I don't
2005.
care about 2005, yeah.
Yep. Well, I did say mid, so that counts.
Close enough.
Yeah, because people always say that spoilers will ruin the whole experience, and that is like a big sentiment. That once you're spoiled, it's like some people now they don't even want to go experience it. But it's like there's an argument to be made that if you didn't want to experience it because of that one little spoiler, then you probably weren't gonna care that much for it anyway.
Like they might not have found the journey worth it if they were only after that detail. Is that what you're saying, or?
Yeah, exactly. If you're only after that big moment, that big twist or whatever, and you don't really care about the rest, then it wasn't that great. Which is like, because you were saying earlier with Shakespeare, that even though people knew the ending, it was still special. And I feel like this is kind of the opposite, where people don't really care about the journey. They just want to know what the ending is or what the twist is. And like, that's why spoiler culture has gotten so big. Well, I don't know. What do you want to call it? Not spoiler culture.
It's kind of like the idea where the destination is the most important part. It's more important than the journey to get there.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, ending centric, I guess, resolution centric. I don't know. I'm not entirely sure of a good term for it, but
I mean, whether it's whether it's a video game or a PowerPoint presentation or a commercial or what have you, typically people are going to remember most the beginning and the end. Why during like Nintendo Directs, the biggest reveals will be at the beginning and the end of the Direct, things that they want to push the most.
Yeah, that's true.
So, I might be playing into that.
Yeah. But it's like that's the whole reason I think it's gotten so big is people care so much about the ending. But I would still argue that spoilers are like, they're not the end of the world. They don't ruin stories at all because the ending is only one part. But they do kind of ruin that one part because you're not going to be experiencing the ending the way it was like meant to be experienced with all the characters and the build up and stuff. And like even with character deaths, I don't know about y'all, but when I'm spoiled that a character is gonna die, it's like I don't see them the same way now. Cause it's like I know you're only gonna be here so much longer, so it's like I don't want to get too attached to anything you say or do.
Yeah.
And that kind of ruins the, well, maybe it doesn't ruin the character, but it changes it a lot.
Well, if I know a character's gonna die, then they're definitely not going in my main party because I'm not feeding them XP for that.
Well,
exactly.
Well, here's some interesting examples of that where I'd like to ask what you guys think about cases where characters are going to be lost from the party forever. But that means that if you didn't do everything you could with them, then, you won't have the opportunity to do that for the rest of the game because they won't be around anymore. Or characters whose deaths you can prevent if you do certain things. But if you let them die, then they're gone for the rest of the adventure. Like in, I'm not going to say who exactly it is, try to remain as spoiler-free as I can, but in Fire Emblem Fates, in one of the routes...
That's exactly what I was talking about. That's what I just came to my mind.
what, Fate's the one specific route there, where you need to A-support some character or else they die, if you're not best friends by a certain chapter.
I actually... Well, vent about that. Because as I was playing that, I was so pissed that happened, because I thought it was unavoidable. I thought it was unavoidable when I got there. So I just, oh, well, they're gone. So I saved afterwards, and then I then find out, oh, I could have avoided that. I see. I would have loved to have been spoiled for that, so I could have know how to know how to prevent it. And those are sorts of cases where I feel like it's very useful to have a sort of like guide through this experience. At least if your goal is to experience everything in the game.
Well, that's actually something I was thinking, because you said earlier you were glad to get spoiled. That's interesting, because I feel like in this day and age when there's so much media, so much just stuff, even going back into like classic stuff, old movies, books, games that came out years ago, and then everything that's coming out today, like you can't experience all of it. You just kind of can't. So it's like spoiling some of it can help for you to figure out what you actually want to experience. And it's like the only difference there is that someone else shouldn't make that choice for you. You should just decide yourself, okay, I'm going to look up a synopsis of this and spoil it for myself, quote unquote, even though you're not really spoiling it, to see if I'm actually going to like it or not. Because Harmony, we've kind of talked about this before, like all the video essays that people make, and there are so many video essays on games that are like obscure that get a ton of views, because it's like, I don't know this game, I would normally never be interested in this game, but for whatever reason, listening to someone talk about it for hours is like really appealing.
Yeah,
I think part of it is because you're not interested, you're not worried about spoilers, but ultimately the spoilers are what's going to get you interested.
Yeah, like I've seen a lot of memes going around in recent years of, captions something along the lines of sorry, I don't have time today. I have to tune into this 4-hour video essay of a game I've never heard about. This YouTuber,
Yeah, and it's like you've never heard about it, so you're not worried about getting spoiled because you don't feel like you're gonna play it. But then after that whole video, you might be like, that sounds really cool. I'm gonna actually go play that.
Or might just be like, oh wow, that's really awful. I'm gonna steer clear of that. If it's a video essay on something really awful, like maybe one day I should make a video essay on Sly 4 after all.
Sly Cooper?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I see.
I didn't even know there was a Sly 4.
Oh yeah, a different company made it and basically threw everything from the trilogy in the trash can.
Yeah.
Story-wise.
I hate when that happens. Okay. What was I going to say next? I had it in my brain and then I
just
lost
like
it.
that there's no harm in being spoiled for things that you're not familiar with, or might be a little bit curious about but feel like you might never play. Like I'm sure that I get comments all the time on my like I get comments all the time on my Pokemon video essays, for example, people being like, I haven't actually played Pokemon for a long time. I have no attachment to the modern games. But man, I had no idea it was like this. Thank you so much for the video essay,
Yeah, and I guess the other side of that is going back to that study I was talking about from Fermata, like enjoyment versus impact, because everyone in that study said they enjoyed it more. They consciously enjoyed it more. That doesn't mean that they're gonna remember it, that any of it is gonna stick with them.
Sure.
Because like your favorite stories or your favorite twist endings are the ones that really catch you by surprise. They're like something you've never seen before. They're memorable in the way that they're portrayed. And it's like
Yeah.
that impact is probably not going to be with you as much if you spoiled it. Even if there's still an impact, even if you still love it, it's never going to be as much love as it would have been if you experienced it the normal way, quote unquote.
Yeah, like in games like Tears of the Kingdom or Xenoblade Chronicles, where when things are revealed, you can put all the pieces together and you get that aha moment.
Exactly.
Yeah, getting robbed of that aha moment can, like, depending on what you want out of a game, like some people don't really care about that, but then for some people that really enjoy piecing everything together, then it's, yeah, that is the enjoyment of the experience for them, and losing that can make it a little bit less memorable, as you say, yeah.
And personally, I'm playing through Persona 4 right now, and this is part of why.
Okay.
Oh yeah, you love that game, right?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, I'm playing through it now. This is part of why I don't really hold that study to be the end all be all, because it was ultimately one study by one guy. We need more studies to be sure. It's like, cause that game is a murder mystery basically. There are these killings going on, and you have to figure out who the killer is. And it's like, I got spoiled on who the killer is.
Well, it's very hard to dodge that one.
It is very, very, very difficult.
Yeah, I did as well because of memes.
Oh.
Yeah.
Sadly.
Yeah, and it's like, bro, I got through like half the game before I got spoiled, and that was genuinely one of my favorite parts. Was trying to figure out who the killer is, and I was at a point where like, yo, I'm actually stumped. Like I just don't know who it could possibly be. And then I get spoiled, and it's like, okay, well now that whole aspect of the game is just robbed from me.
Yeah.
It's just gone. And it's like, I still love the game. It's still great, but it's like, damn, that bit, I can't enjoy that anymore. It sucks.
Yeah, can't piece that together.
Luckily, I think Persona 4 does have a lot of other stuff going for it, in that, while that is a big part of the game, I feel like a lot of the focus is on the individual characters and their arcs.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So it's definitely not like, it's not like, I know this thing and everything is ruined, but I do understand what you're saying.
Yeah. Still an aspect that you can't piece together.
Yeah.
Like when I was playing Persona 5 recently, having wrapped that up, oftentimes what I find, not just with that game, but a lot of games, is that as a streamer content creator, as you're in the middle of doing something or piecing something together, people who get really excited and really passionate about the game in your chat will just start typing what's happening. It's like, come on, can you not? Like in Persona 5, during like the big kind of twisty putting pieces together of like the super crazy plan the Phantom Thieves pulled off without the player realizing it before. You know, all the information starts pouring out, and I'm starting to put the pieces together, and then you'll just have people in chat being like, okay, so this is what happened, and then they did this, and then this. I was like, can you not? Or whenever I'm playing, you know, pretty much any action game, like Tears of the Kingdom, for example, and fighting the final boss, and then you beat this phase, and then immediately the moment that health bar reaches 0, people will start writing in chat, all right, phase 2, and it's like, can you not? You know? Like, it doesn't take away that much enjoyment in the long term, but it's still like kind of annoying in the short term of, man, I wanted to have that aha moment, you know?
Yeah, and that actually kind of reminds me, because I kind of know why people do that. It's because well, maybe not in your case, but generally it's like annoying to see the streamer get like kind of frustrated or just sort of be wrong a bunch, and you just kind of want to help them out, just tell them what's going on. But that made me think of what you were saying earlier, Fermata, about Dark Souls. A lot of people didn't like that game at first because it's so difficult, it's so hard, but it's not enjoyable in that case. But when you
I think
actually
it was more so Demon Souls that people struggled with, and then later when Dark Souls came out, people started to be like, okay.
Well, I think back then people still struggled with Dark Souls a lot. I don't think the series started to become more mainstream until Bloodborne. But it's like a lot of people didn't enjoy Dark Souls at first, and it's like if you were to like, if they were streaming and you would watch them stream, you'd see they're very frustrated, they're getting upset, they probably don't even like the game at first. But if you just let them go by themselves, eventually at the end they'll end up loving it. Well, assumedly,
because
most people did.
because they earned that by the end.
Yeah, because
on
they
their own
got
merit.
there themselves. They earned it, which yeah, you were saying that earlier. And it's like I don't know why I'm saying it's like so much, but that ties back into what I was saying about enjoyment versus impact, because you didn't enjoy it at first. Not you, but just the person playing Dark Souls.
Me?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, honestly.
They didn't enjoy it at first, but at the end, there was more impact because they got through it themselves instead of someone being like, "All right, here's just how you do it." I'm sick of you being frustrated.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, people kind of spoiled that for you because probably they were just like, "Here, this is it. I don't want to see you
Yeah.
not get it right." But it's like you have to let them go through that.
Yeah,
That's
or I
part
feel
of
like
it.
the streamer should be like, all right, I'm open to hints here, or maybe just writing in chat like, hey, would you like a little bit of help here? Because sometimes there are in games like that some absolutely stupidly designed bosses, aka bed of chaos, that the developers had to literally apologize for later. Like, yeah, sorry we designed that so awfully, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
So there are definitely some bosses like that sometimes.
Yeah.
Or
I think.
yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I was about to say, or if there's just like something really convoluted that you have to do in order to progress through a boss. Like usually if it's something really convoluted, a lot of games will actually tell you themselves when something like that happens. Like here's an example that, you know, it's probably not too spoilery to say because it's from 1998, Metal Gear Solid, where you go up against Psycho Mantis and he starts reading your mind.
Oh,
Hey,
wait a minute.
and you have to
Okay,
change your
okay,
controller
okay.
slot. That he doesn't
I'm
read your
sorry.
mind anymore from the P1 slot.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh man, I love that. I love that.
It's so good.
It's such a.
So good.
It's so funny.
I'm sorry, I
But,
jumped again. I thought you, because it's like, bro, how are you gonna act like it's from 1998? You just played it for the first time. Like that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah,
But
I did.
never
Yeah, I
mind.
did just
It
play it for
wasn't
the
a big
first time
spoiler.
recently, but that was pretty neat there. But you know, the game expects you to lose against it, and then you get a call from the colonel, and he's like, "That's it, change your controller slot." Although on PC he says like, "Stop using controller and start using the keyboard instead."
Hmm.
How it works there.
I did it.
And then
That's actually
Psycho
pretty
Mantis is
cool.
like, "I can't read you." Great.
I think that say kind of what you were hitting on with like the Dark Souls. And actually, you mentioned this a bit earlier. Is I think a lot of it kind of comes down to intentionality from like the developers. In the case of like Dark Souls, right? The intention is that the game is going to be difficult, and it does not give you any hints along the way because it's meant to be convoluted and like not hold your hand the whole way through, right?
You truck
I
the way
think-
that kills you the least.
Yeah. And I think that there are other games that can be like we can kind of take this like we can kind of go through the spoiler more literally because like one example that I had was like because there's some pieces of media, this can be like anime games, whatever, right? Where
Mhm.
like the game like where multiple games in the series will kind of like reference or make known events that happened in other parts of the series.
Mhm.
Where it's like, and I've heard people describe this as like those games spoil each other. So like one thing I've
Oh.
so like one thing I've seen for a lot in like a series
Just
I've
play
played is, like,
things
the
in
trail
order.
stuff. Yeah, like it generally
Bro.
comes down to like play things in order. So like in the Trail series, right, there are about 2 to 3 games in the series that take place at the same time. Like they all take place concurrently.
Hmm.
They were released in a particular order though. So it's like the developers intend for you to play this one and then the next two, right? And in cases like that, it's like I don't feel like cases like that are the games are spoiling each other. It's just that the game will make known events that will happen and that you will see on screen for the first time later when you end up
Yeah.
playing those games.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think that's a spoiler.
Yeah.
I think it's like you wouldn't watch the sequel to a movie and they reference a character's death in the first movie and be like, "What? It's a spoiler."
No!
you went into it knowing that it's the
Yeah.
sequel. You have to expect
Yeah.
some level of that kind of thing.
But I think an even like more apt comparison is like when you watch it's like when a movie's released or something like that, and then a prequel gets released. So like watching the regular movie will very likely make events known that will happen in the prequel, like a superhero origin story, for example, right?
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't make the prequel any less enjoyable. The point is that you know how it's going to end or what the result is going to be. You just
Yeah.
don't know how it's going to get there.
Yeah.
That's the intention.
Mm-hmm. I do feel like that's a little different because in prequel, that's like the point, the whole point. I don't feel like that's usually the case in most stories, though.
Yeah, most stories typically aren't gonna want you to know the end and then figure out how you get there. I mean, some stories will do that. Maybe not quite right with the end, but just look at things like Fire Emblem Awakening, where the
Yeah.
game starts with "This is it, Robin, our final battle," and it's like, "Whoa, what's going on?" You know?
And then you kill,
that's a
and then
spoiler.
and then you stab Crom, and then fade to black.
Yeah, I was like, "Wait, what?" You know?
And then the ground is a weird place to be sleeping. I forgot
Give me
exactly
your
the
hand.
opening line of the game.
I still gotta play that game. It's crazy. I'm a Fire Emblem player in Smash, but I've never played a Fire Emblem game.
Have you even played the game Roy's from?
Yeah, I've never beaten it though.
All right, time to
Did I
spoil you.
I
I mean, I got.
spoiler: Roy is the worst character in the game.
Yeah,
I mean,
is that why they made him trash in Melee?
I haven't actually played Fire Emblem 6, but I am already spoiled to some of the aspects of it, considering my first Fire Emblem game was Fire Emblem 7, which is the prequel to 6, so I know that there's some stuff going on with some characters that's like, oh, okay. No.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much said all I had to say about spoilers. We kind of transitioned this whole thing into a podcast about spoilers, at least this section, which I think is good, honestly. But I think I pretty much said all I had to say. I think the main points, and Fermata, feel free to correct me on any of this, that we talked about are just spoilers are not the end all be all. Not absolutely every story is ruined or having a spoiler. Not every story is all about the ending, but at the same time, spoilers aren't necessarily a good thing. You should choose to opt into spoilers if you want to, and if you don't, then anyone spoiling you is, because like spoilers will completely, they won't ruin the movie or the experience or the game, but they'll ruin that heart of it. They'll ruin the tension for that, and that sucks.
I think a game or experience that can be good despite that is indicative of a fantastic experience.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree.
But it might still be better without the spoilers.
Sure.
Well, yeah, that was my whole thing, is that even though you can get spoilers and it still be fine, it's always going to be better if you experienced it naturally, the way it was intended to be experienced, instead of like a sort of butchered version of it where someone's just kind of telling you.
Yeah.
But Harmonia, you wanted to talk about something a little bit different to do with tension and expectations, which is like, what was that? How do you view games differently depending on how old you get? No.
Yeah. Those are a couple different things we were discussing. Yeah, one of the things that I had as an idea was just like how our perspective on games might change as we get older. If this relates enough to the overall topic that we have here on.
I mean, I think one good example that we have that kind of ties into it is the idea of wanting to be spoiled on stuff. Like, not wanting to bother with like Invincibles. We can catch it on the new game plus, but like, what if I don't want to play a game through twice? What if I don't want to spend another 80 hours? Yeah, so like, I feel like these are perspectives like I might not have said something like that 10, 15 years ago, right? Like, oh, I'll just play it on New Game Plus. That's fine.
Yeah.
But now, maybe not as much.
Yeah, even with me recently, I just beat Persona 5. I just finished the game, and like, there's a New Game Plus where you can do a whole bunch of other stuff, and you can finish all your confidants, and it's like, I kind of don't want to do that. The game was 130 hours long.
It was 130 for you. It was like 170 for me.
Oh God. What the hell? I
got my sweet 99%.
Oh, nice.
I'm done now.
Why not 100? What's 100?
Because I don't feel like doing New Game Plus to get the stuff that I missed.
Yeah, it's like, I would have loved to probably do that as a kid because I really enjoyed this game, and it's like, oh, an excuse to play through one of my favorite games again. Oh yeah. But now it's like, you know, there's other stuff I could be doing. I don't really want to play through this 100-hour game again after I just beat it, so I'm just gonna probably look stuff up. Look up the confidants I missed.
Biggest case of that I would have experienced recently was Fire Emblem 3 Houses, the game I can't seem to stop talking about on these podcasts. But you know, if you're taking your time with it, I'd say that it's about a 70-hour JRPG. If you're bum rushing it a lot more, then maybe it's 40 or 50. But the full story is across 4 different routes, and the first over half of it is basically the exact same every single time. They just do like, you know, first playthrough, then New Game Plus all the way through 3 more times to get the full story. And I, as a content creator, had the obligation to do that, and it ended up being like a, 305-part series. And that's with one of the streams just lost to the void. So in reality, if I actually had everything saved, it would have been a bit more than that. Across like 300 plus hours, those parts were averaging about an hour each. And
Damn.
my goodness gracious, I feel like the best way to experience that game is just play through it once, and then just look up the cutscenes of the rest on YouTube or something like that.
Yeah.
As a kid, I probably would have loved to sink my teeth into this game that I'd love, just over and over and over again and get like some new content each time. But nowadays it's like, man, I have other stuff I need to do. I can't put up with this. And as soon as I finished up Three Houses, they announced Three Hopes, the spin-off of Three Houses that also has multiple routes, and I've done like one playthrough of it at like 130 parts, and part of me is like, yeah, I guess I'll get to the other two at some point, but another part of me is like, what if I just don't, and I hope that people forget that was an obligation I had,
Wait, what do you mean obligation? Was someone holding a gun to your head? What are we talking about?
Not necessarily, but just like the whole notion of, as a content creator, I feel compelled to finish, projects I start, playthroughs that I start, because, I'll always have people asking, like, when are you going to finish this? When are you going to get on that? Like, I've had that recently with Octopath Traveler 2, with like, I've beaten the game now, but there's a secret boss that is super insanely tough, and I've had people being like, all right, well, the secret boss is the last thing they have to do, so we're going to return to do that, and it's like, are we going to? Pretty sure that's my decision, but,
No, you have to do what your fans ask.
But honestly, I had a very similar experience with like Octopath 2, and actually, like we were talking a little bit about this Harmonia, but it's like, because Octopath 1 was it still is such a special game for me. Like
Same.
that was actually, it was the game that convinced me to buy a Switch. Like that was like, it's like,
Really?
I have to play this game. I'm buying a Switch this summer.
Mm-hmm.
So like, played through it pretty much 100%ed it. I think because I did like every side quest, did all the optional dungeons, just did everything, right, including like the final boss of that game, which was fun time. And like for anyone that's played Octopath Traveler, if you haven't, essentially it is it's very intense, lots of time investment, but a very fun fight. But the thing is, if I were to play that final boss now, I would probably not I would probably just not, to be honest.
Not
just
worth
because like
investment again.
Because at the time I was like still in college, right? Like I had a lot more free time on my hands. It was also during the summer, right? So I was literally had more free time. But essentially it's a very similar experience with Octopath 2 and the secret boss, even though the secret boss here probably takes less time investment, all things said and done.
I found that it took a lot less time for me to grind in Octopath 2 than 1 to get up to a higher level than I was in Octopath 1 for the final boss. But I find that it's a lot harder in 2, and it expects a lot more in terms of builds and stuff. Despite being very similar, they just made things a lot harder for the hardest challenge in that game, I find. And it's like, man, do I have the time to allot to wrap this up?
Like technically I'd have the time, but like I'd rather just like play some other games on my backlog, because I also feel like I have much more of a backlog now than I did then. I think part of it was also that was literally my first Switch game, right? So I was like, I'm not playing anything else at the moment. After that, it was like Xenoblade, so that's short game after that, right?
Like when I did Octopath 1, it was back when I streamed Smash 4 viewer games and Dead by Daylight, mostly multiplayer games, and Octopath was my nice little break from things.
Daylight.
Yeah, as opposed to nowadays where I'm constantly balancing a bazillion games, and it's like, I gotta finish this off so I can actually move on to my other projects.
Yeah, multiplayer games are kind of an interesting component of that, because those are kind of like, well, not just multiplayer games, but kind of, I'll call them like endless grind sort of games.
Yeah.
Where it's like,
the kinds of games where you can put infinite time into.
Yeah, it's like they will fill all the time you have allotted for.
Yep.
And it's like, because there was a long period of time where I was like really into like League of Legends, and that was like my game. I played that so much, like throughout high school. Listen,
that is kind of gross.
Oh my god. I will say like that playing that game a lot did teach me a lot. Like I probably wouldn't have played Smash Ultimate, for example, if I didn't play League of Legends all that time. Just because
compromises.
Yeah, but like when I was like playing that game a lot, I wasn't playing a lot of the other single player games. Like there were a few every now and then that I would play, but like certainly not to the same extent. Whereas like now, it's like I'm moving away more from those sorts of endless grind games, with a couple like exceptions, but even then I don't like put a ton of time to them. Like the closest comparison I have to that was like there was a big period of time where I was like FF14, like Final Fantasy 14, the MMO.
Wait a minute,
right?
hold on. Are you talking about the critically acclaimed MMO?
with a free trial up to level 60 and unlimited free playtime. Yes, the very
Wait, that
same.
Final Fantasy 14? Oh my god, okay.
But yeah, no, but essentially it was like a game I like played a lot with like one of my friends. He convinced me to get into it, and we essentially played through. So like pretty much played through the entire game together. Like did a bunch of side optional content and like all the story stuff. But now we're caught up. And now that we're caught up, I actually don't feel as much of the incentive to like spend every day in it. And I much prefer the sort of like, all right, I love doing the hardcore raiding, and I'm going to do raiding on these days each week, like Monday, Wednesday, for example. And during these 2 to 3 hours on those days, I'm playing Final Fantasy 14. Outside of that, doing whatever I want. It's like having that schedule for those sorts of games I've found is much more enjoyable for me. It just lets me kind of just set up my schedule for the week. I don't just, it's not an infinite grind. It's just certain times. And it's like, all right, I'm spending 6 hours on this game each week. I can spend the other hours on whatever else. And I just find that's like much more healthy for what I want to do with the game, I find.
Well, I mean, I feel like with this whole topic, the only game that I can speak to personally off the top of my head really is Mario 64, which is an example I can use. Which is that game, you guys know, 120 stars is like synonymous with the game,
What?
right?
Spoil that for me.
Yeah, like you get 120 stars. Everyone knows that you get 120 stars. It's like, it's to the point now where it's like, people feel like you have to get 120 stars to finish the game. But I see so many people now play through it, and there's like they're bum rushing it. They're trying to go through, do everything super efficiently, and it's like, bro, you're not gonna enjoy it like that. That's not how it was meant to be played. I know, because if you think about it as a kid, if you found 120 stars, you weren't bum rushing it through. You were taking your time, going through each world. You know,
That was me with Mario
going
Galaxy.
one world. Yeah, go in one world, get like 2 stars, and leave. Go to another world. But these guys, they're like entering a world like, all right, I'm gonna do all 7 stars, and I have to do these 7 before I leave. And it's
Are
like,
you talking about speedrunners? No, I'm joking. But
no, just regular people. And it's like, and they'll like be mad at the game, like, oh, this game sucks. All these stars are so annoying. And I'm like, okay, so don't do them. Like, don't have to. You don't have to get 120 stars. You don't have to do all this. And the reason they're doing it so like in this like bum rush style is because they're trying to get it out the way so they can get to the next game. And it's like, bro, that's not how you're meant to play any game.
I feel attacked.
I was not talking about specifically you, but it's like, yeah, they'll just like bum rush through it to get it out the way, and it's like, that's not how you enjoy a game. It's not how you're supposed to really play any game. So it's like, if you don't enjoy it as much as other people, that's probably a big reason why. But I also can't really blame people for that, because again, we all have huge backlogs these days.
Yeah, like what I was gonna say earlier there was my experience with games over the years has been like, I used to spend a lot of time in multiplayer games, mostly Smash Bros. And Dead by Daylight. That, you know, my channel kind of started out as I had a lot of fun playing those games. I just wanted to share it. But then eventually when I started doing playthrough stuff, I was like, all right, this is my excuse to, you know, cover some classic games here that I've enjoyed over the years and, you know, get them covered on the channel, and also the chance to experience some things that I've never tried before. That, you know, this is my excuse to finally try them out. And it's created such a backlog though. Well, first of all, in terms of like multiplayer versus single player, the infinite grind kind of games where you could in theory put in infinite hours. I have what, like 1,500 hours in Dead by Daylight. I have probably a couple thousand in Smash across Smash 4 and Ultimate, most likely. And it's like, am I really making any more progress in it? Is there anything that I've yet to experience here? Like, maybe I'm still continuing to improve my skill at the game, but is there anything new that I'm going to be taking with me, like a new experience that I'll be able to have here? And I eventually decided that there wasn't really. I, you know, gotten a good experience of what this game is. I should spend that time on something that I haven't tried before. And because of that, I basically don't really play multiplayer games much at all anymore nowadays, apart from just from time to time with friends for fun and family and stuff like that. Nowadays, I figure why bother taking that time when I can, you know, get a new experience covered that I haven't done before, or a new, you know, series done on the channel, and I've created a crazy backlog through that. But because of that, I feel like I'm not quite able to enjoy games as much as I did, you know, years ago, because I don't really savor them as much. It's more so just like, hey, I've started this project, I need to see it through. Let's get it done. like with Tears of the Kingdom, for example, recently. Both Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are very easy games to just like go around aimlessly doing all sorts of things that you stumble on. And I was doing that for a decent bit of the Tears of the Kingdom playthrough. And then eventually I was like, how about I just commit to the main objectives, see it through, then it's beaten, my obligations are done, and then if I come back to play it, then I can just, you know, take it at my own pace from there, doing like the shrines that I missed, but only if I have the time to do so from there. Or,
that's kind of the thing, like your obligations are done.
Yeah.
Even people who aren't streamers, they kind of, I feel like they see it that way. And even me,
just
it's like,
the
all right,
obligation part.
Yeah, like all right, I beat it, I'm done, I don't have to do anything else. And it's like, why are so many people playing games like it's their jobs? Like, this is crazy. Like for you, it is, well, I don't know if it's your job, but it's like a source of income, so you have the excuse. But I'm talking about like regular people just playing games. A lot of us do it like that, and it's like, why?
Sometimes I'll force myself through games that I don't really like, you know, for the sake of covering it as part of the channel. Like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet is a big recent one. Or if I'm playing something that's just like really, really old school for the sake of covering it, getting that experience and seeing what it's like and getting that gaming experience under my belt. Like the original Metal Gear, for example, from 1987, where it's like, yeah, it might not have aged that well by modern standards, you know, but I'll try to push through anyway. I think I did actually end up getting frustrated enough with both Metal Gear and Metal Gear 2 that I think I looked up how to do it at the end, and I think I just watched like the ending on YouTube as part of my series and gave credit to the video that I watched. I was like, yeah, I'm done. I think the only retro Metal Gear game that I actually beat was Snake's Revenge, which is so funny to me.
That's funny, the worst one.
That's the best one. What are you talking about? I love Snake's Revenge.
Actually, Harmonia, I'm curious, do you like, how much do you actually play games off stream nowadays? Like, is that something you even do?
No.
Like, anymore?
Only if I'm grinding for something on my channel. If I'm playing,
but at that point,
if I'm playing with if I'm playing multiplayer games with family, if I'm playing something like Smash Bros with online friends of mine, I basically only have one person that I play with. I play Smash Online with Carvia sometimes. It's basically my only opponent there. Yeah, we play from time to time. Haven't touched Dead by Daylight in over a year. I've been sober a while. It's pretty much just grinding in games or playing games with family. That's it. I don't really know the experience much at all anymore of just playing a game on my own time. Because I figure, why would I do it on my own time there when I can be making progress on a series on the channel that I get through to the end of? Because I have all these goals of series that I want to get all the way through. Like, I think it was the beginning of 2020 that I started the complete Assassin's Creed series, including spin-offs. And now I'm like 2 games until being fully caught up. I'm so close. I want to cover all the Mario RPG games. I want to go through the whole Metal Gear series, all sorts of things. Where it's like, I just want to get through these and get these experiences, you know? Have them covered. And when I was starting out, I was doing it a lot more casually and just, you know, playing purely whatever I was having the most fun with. And because of that, there were some series that happened twice in 2 different formats. Like Mario Galaxy, I have 2 playthroughs of on my channel because they were later released on the Switch. Same with Skyward Sword, for example there. So there's a very few handful of games I've played twice on the channel. Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Explorers of Sky is another one. But for the most part...
was another one.
Oh yeah, Metroid Prime, that's a recent one.
Oh,
just because I figured I could get through that fast, since it'd be the second time now. And that was actually a slapping remaster, not gonna lie. That was pretty good. But for the most part, I figure I'll get through things, and that's done. I never have to play this again. If ever I want to refer back to it, I can just watch my series, you know?
Oh, that's crazy.
I'm there forever.
But it's interesting when you say, like, I never have to play this again, rather than, like, getting to play this again. Like, it feels like it really plays into the idea of, like,
I might not have the best perspective anymore.
I feel like that happens to a lot of content creators. Go ahead, Fermata.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I'm just gonna segue into something slightly different, but related. Once you finish the point.
Because I don't know if you guys know what is his name, the fighting game guy. You know who I'm talking about?
There are a lot of fighting game guys.
Max, the fighting game guy.
Okay.
I don't know.
Hold on. Let me see if I can get a picture.
Like Maximilian Dude, is this the guy you're talking about?
Maximilian Dude, that's his name.
Maximilian Robespierre?
I haven't like watched him, but like I've like seen that he does stuff.
He made a video a while back about how he doesn't play games on his own anymore. He just doesn't enjoy them because it's like he almost feels like he can't enjoy them anymore. Well, there was a game coming out. I think it was Elden Ring, and he was like he got the chance to play it. What was it? Early access, and he wasn't allowed to stream. And even though that's the game he would normally love, because he loves the Souls games, he like didn't enjoy it because it's like games have become a social experience to him, and that he was just playing that by himself. So it was like not fun. It didn't feel like he was being as productive as he could be.
Yeah,
It
that's
wasn't
the feel that
social.
is for me, where it's like this time could be invested into something that makes progress on something on the channel, or it could be a social event with streaming, something like that. It's weird sitting here on my own.
Yeah, and it's like games become like a stressful thing to play by yourself. They're not an enjoyable thing anymore. And it's
Yeah.
like that's a really crazy shift in perspective that I feel like
Yeah.
a lot of content creators go through.
If ever
It's
I'm
kind
playing
of
games on my own for grinding, I try my best to be efficient, with my time.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And that's why
that is it.
the most recent case of
Efficiency.
that is Fire Emblem Engage, where I got halfway through the DLC, and my goodness, the DLC maps there, they are very different compared to the normal Fire Emblem approach that I'm used to of like bait out this group of enemies, deal with them, heal up, move forward, deal with the next group of enemies, so on and so forth. Where
Turtling is goaded.
the DLC map, yeah, that game very much promotes aggression, and the DLC maps especially so. Because like the longer you take, the more screwed you're gonna be. Because eventually, the map that I was stuck on starts spawning 12 flyers every turn that start bum rushing you immediately. And I think that you only have like 8 units on that map or something like that. It's ridiculous. But the way that is in the DLC is there is some main game progress that carries over, like your skills, your affinity levels, and bond levels with emblems and stuff like that. And I was like, all right, well, one, I'm going to change my strategy to just bum rush the objective and, defeat the bosses and stuff like that. Two, I'm going to take the time to grind off camera to, get the skills that I want to really deck out my party and be as strong as I know I can here. Trouble is, grinding in that game is so darn annoying because unlike the 3DS games where you had like really simple, easy DLC grinding maps, so unfortunately being paid, but DLC grinding maps where you could just like turn off your brain, there's almost no risk to you, and you go in there and get a whole bunch of experience. In Engage, there's only the skirmishes, which you can't turn your brain off in. They're not super insanely difficult, but they're difficult enough that you need to constantly be engaged. You can't just, watch YouTube or something like that on the side like I did with the 3DS games. Which means that, I'm not being as efficient balancing multiple things at the same time. And two, it doesn't really grant a whole lot of experience and skill points there. Like, I'll get through a battle and, maybe if units will get a couple hundred SP skill points, whereas to get one skill at the highest level, I could be all the way up to 8,400 skill points I need. Like, it's just not very efficient.
It's
So
all
what
about,
I did recently, just because I do not have the time to dump in dozens upon dozens of hours just grinding out the best skills that I can get, I started trying out Yuzu for the first time that I've ever done around here, and got Engage going on that so I could get cheats going. And I've taken the time to go all the way through the game a second time with cheaty peach strats just to unlock all the characters and emblems and stuff like that. And I'm now in the process of using infinite SP cheats to get all the skills I want on every character and just resume the DLC from where I left off with the skills that I want without as much grinding time. I say as I recently passed 10 hours in my Yuzu save file, but it's probably still more efficient than had I continued to play on my Switch there. So, I've resorted to some drastic measures just be more considerate to my time, because I do not have the time that I did, had I played this game like 10 years ago.
Let me ask you though, if this were like 10 years ago, for example, right?
Yeah.
And let's say like Engage had come out 10 years ago and you were doing this thing, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that you would have been much more likely to like sink in the time grinding like on Switch proper than like now where you like going taking the user approach?
Yeah, I definitely would have been a lot more compelled to take the time back then. I probably also wouldn't have been playing on the hardest difficulty back then. Nowadays, in recent years, I like to play almost every game I play on the hardest difficulty, so that's a factor as well in needing to grind here. But yeah, I feel like back when I would dump so much time into games. Like one game that gets really repetitive that I was able to push through as a teenager, for example, was Pokemon Conquest, where it's like the main game of that.
Dude, I love that game.
Yeah, the main game of that is really short, and you get done, and then you start unlocking all the different stories and stuff like that. And if you actually want to take the time to do like the bazillion stories, get all the Warlord evolutions, all the Pokemon evolutions, all the legendary Pokemon and stuff like that, you could dump like 100+ hours into that, doing different slight variations of the exact same game over and over and over again. And I 100%ed it. That's not something I could envision myself doing nowadays, but I did back then. Or things like playing Mario Galaxy when that was first new, and I remember I got that as a gift there. I took the time to 100% the game, and then 100% it again as Luigi with a secondary save file that you get. Something that I would never do nowadays, you know?
Yeah. And your whole perspective was just shifted.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Like for me, actually, similar thing where like I got the 3D All Stars thing. I played through Mario Galaxy.
Gross.
I read it. It was awesome. I listen. So, because my Wii copy of Super Mario Galaxy doesn't work anymore. So that's actually that is the best way for me to play now. Which is like,
hey, don't listen to him. 3D All Stars is not that bad.
Like I like
business practices.
I like the games that are I like having availability to the games though, accessibility to the games. Now, but anyway,
I don't think I
realized
categorize 3D All Stars as accessible, if that's a word.
Now that I have it, it's accessible. But anyway, the point being is that like a similar thing where I 100% Super Mario Galaxy with Mario, but I didn't really feel as much of the incentive to do it as Luigi. Although I'm not 100% sure if I would have as a kid, because I was a little bit impatient as a kid too. But like, I don't know. I was like, all right, cool. I played this. I kind of wanted to move on to the next game at that point.
I mean, one thing that also changes there is just like time that you would have, both time and money for games. Like I remember one summer when I was working for an IT company that did contract work for various other companies, and I spent several weeks working at casinos doing IT work there. And I remember my coworker, he had mentioned to me as we were going around the casino there, like, notice anything about the age of people here? And I noticed that most of the people that were coming into the casino were like older people. And I had mentioned that, and he had told me, you know, when you're young, when you're a kid, you have lots of time and lots of energy, but no money. When you're an adult, you have lots of money and lots of energy, but no time. But then when you're elderly, you have lots of time and lots of money, but no energy. And that was his excuse for why a lot of people might be attracted to things like that take very little energy to do, and you can use like your lots of time and money on and stuff like that. And I feel like that kind of plays into games as well, where it's like when you're a kid, you're not going to have a lot of money to invest into picking up new titles, but you have lots of time to play games. I feel like that's probably one of the key reasons why we've seen like such a just a surge in general, a rise in the last decade of freemium games that especially a lot of kids get into, because they have lots of time to play games, but not a lot of money to spend on like new full price games all the time. Like nowadays, I'm in a position where it's like, yeah, if I want to go and pick up whatever game to be able to cover, I can just do that. It's no problemo. But will I have the time to do it? That's another question. No.
Yeah. And it's a similar approach, like the kind of a lot of mobile games hit on the people that have time and have money and energy, but not the time. So like people who will play it on commutes and stuff like that. Yeah. A lot of these mobile games are kind of aimed at that sort of demographic of people.
Yeah, pull out your phone on the commute or during have a little break in work, just pull out the phone and stuff like that with how easily accessible it is. Sure.
I also want to hit on actually a point you mentioned earlier, Sate, about like not being able to enjoy games on your own, at least from like the streamer perspective. Because there's actually a similar thing I've heard from like people in the game development industry, people who like hell I even work with, right? Where it's like depending on what they're working on. So like for example, someone is working with vehicles all the time, right? Like their job is to make vehicles feel good and like they're gonna be great to play. That means you're spending so much of your time in the game with like vehicles and driving and all that stuff. The last thing that person wants to do is go home and play a racing game.
Yeah.
You go to work and you press buttons so that you can go home and relax by pushing buttons in a different order.
Yeah, it's like and often like and honestly even like some people that I like talk to, it's like they like some people will like go home and like play Call of Duty, right? Because they thrive on it, right? But then for some people it's like, you know, this is what I'm doing for work all day. It's like I need something that's more of a change of pace. And so people, it's like they go home, play Tears of the Kingdom, like Metroid Dread, etc., right? And so sometimes it makes it like when you work in the space, it does make it hard sometimes to enjoy the game casually because you're burnt out on it.
Yeah, I mean,
that makes sense.
Even without doing any work like programming within the gaming industry itself. Well, apart from, you know, programming some short indie games in university, even making video essays and stuff, I feel like my enjoyment changes drastically of a game when I'm not just sitting there even just to stream and enjoy it, but rather to like take mental notes of how I'm going to write this into a video essay, you know?
Yeah.
Drastically changes my perspective. And then it is like I need to pay attention for a job there. Or one interesting example was I once took a university class that was on the use of history in video games. And our final essay in the class, we needed to do an essay on how a certain game abstracts the past. Like what's actual real historical event and what do they abstract? Like what's fictional for the sake of making like a more interesting story or a better gameplay experience or what have you. And the professor recommended that we play something that we're familiar with, but, you know, not something that we love, so we don't just write an essay gushing about what we love. So that was when I started my Assassin's Creed series on the channel. And I decided that I would do my essay on Assassin's Creed 2 because I always heard amazing things about that one, but I never actually played it apart from like a little smidge at the beginning. So I played 1 and like the spin-offs there really quickly just to get through it in like the span of a month, and then started 2. And I was taking 2 really slowly and really analyzing here, like, what's fictitious here, what was written and why, and trying to figure out how I was going to write into my essay and like taking notes throughout writing it. And I feel like that means that I wasn't able to enjoy the game as much as a game because it wasn't just a game, it was a paper that I had to write, you know?
Because you kind of like rushed through a bit of it, kind of as it got near the end, so you could get to everything.
Yeah, I needed to make sure that I could beat the game in time, and then also take the time to kind of review parts of my series, rewatch some cutscenes and stuff like that, but also relatively take my time going through it to make sure that I'm really soaking in all of the plot to be able to write on it well, you know? So that was an interesting example. And the most similar thing to that nowadays is just like my video essays and stuff. When I'm playing through a game trying to think, how am I going to write an essay on this?
Well, I haven't actually... Yeah, it's true. I haven't, as you know, Harmonia, I haven't published any of my video essays yet or anything. But I've been writing them for a while, and I can kind of relate to that, where it's like when there's a game I want to write about, I don't want to just play it casually. I want to play it when I'm like alert and I'm thinking. I don't just want to come home and I'm tired. I'm like, all right, I would just play it and not really think. It's like, no, I want to actually be alert and paying attention. So it's like, it's almost not even as fun of an experience anymore because I'm just, I got to write about it now. It feels like kind of work. It's like, so I can relate to that a little bit. Yeah.
In that class, it was Assassin's Creed 2 and Civilization. The professor told us all to play Civilization. It was the course textbook, any of the Civilization games, you know. And we would have to write like 3 mini papers on that, on ways that it presents history. That also was work. So I did a series on AC2 and Civ 6 on the channel. That was for a class. They were my class textbooks.
I guess you were able to double up then for your own personal channel as well as classwork then.
Yeah, so I got like some series stuff done. And I, you know, it got me to play Civilization for the first time, which I never would have played otherwise. It was actually pretty fun, and I can see why people get addicted. But
and you got your paper done. That was literally 3 things in one.
Yeah. 2 series and my paper's done.
There's also...
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, because there's also one element of it, actually, and this kind of plays actually into like the time, like, well, specifically like the energy part of it, where it's like, there's some, like, because there's some games I'll play where it's like, how to put it? They're very involved. Like, I have to be alert the entire time. So, like, for example, one game I've been playing a decent bit of lately, Street Fighter 6 has been like, that's like the exception of like some of the limited experience or endless grind sort of games, right? I've been having a lot of fun with that. But it's very intense. You have to be like focused the entire time. So when I want to like relax after, like when I'm playing that, I'm like, okay, I need something a bit more chill. I'm not going to go in and play another action RPG or something like that, right? I'm not gonna like, although like, I need something that is more like relaxing. And that's something like, for example, turn-based RPGs, I really enjoy for that reason, where it's like I can just do things at my own pace.
Take your time, plan out your turns.
Yeah, I don't need to like, I can just kind of sit down, relax. I can like move over, do whatever. I don't know, it's just, overall, it's just like a very chill experience. I feel like, I have a suspicion that as I get even older, like 10, 20 years in the future, right? I feel like that is going to be the game that will fill up a lot more of my time, even more than now, just because...
What, Street Fighter?
It's just something... No, turn-based RPGs. Turn-based RPGs. No. Yeah, you know, I'm just going to relax with Street Fighter. No, but
in 20 years, I see myself playing Street Fighter 6.
Okay, to be fair, like FGC players are like you can be old and still be really good at the game, which is kind of cool to see actually. Because like I think like Daigo's like 40 or something, right?
Yeah, he is. Yeah, even
mean-
old players like Ken and Mango are like reaching their 40s.
Which is absurd.
I mean-
and they're still near the top.
Something that was
Mhm.
really interesting earlier this year, I was at an esports expo to help with the Fragapalooza booth, and we were talking with this clearly much older gentleman, and he was asking us if there was any Valorant tournaments going on there. And we were like, yeah, we think there might be over there. And he was like, all right, I gotta go kick some of these young people's butts. It
That's
was
cool.
awesome.
That's
That is
cool.
good.
I would have been an old person like that. But yeah, I was just going to say earlier, I was just going to kind of wrap up that whole thing about our expectations in games kind of changing as we get older and how we don't really have as much time, so we don't really enjoy them as much. I don't really know how that relates to tension, but it's fine. It's just another topic.
I think this overall topic has kind of branched enough that this overall podcast topic is just like enjoyment with games. Whether that
Yeah.
relates to spoilers, tension, getting old, or what have you, you know.
hmm But there was one other thing I want to talk about, and that's how going into games or really any media with expectations can change your perspective of it so much.
Sure.
Because it's like I see so often people will watch or listen to. I thought about this mainly with music. People would listen to like, I'm not even gonna say the album because it's a album. I'm not even gonna mention him.
He says as he mentions him.
Okay, well,
He who shall not be named.
We're not gonna have a whole conversation.
Wait,
about it, I'll say that.
If you're editing things, you can, bleep out whatever you want.
That's true. So Fermata, haha. I can bleep out.
I
everything.
didn't say a name. I didn't say a name.
I
That
know,
was
but you said I said it, so nobody knows if I actually said it now. But anyway, what's like a great all-time great game, universally beloved? Like, let's say
Final Fantasy 7. Okay,
Final Fantasy 7. That's just as good. Yeah.
And a good example of hype leading up to the remake.
Oh, also true.
And it's like
Expectations.
that's just a good game. You've played that game, right, Fermata?
Ocarina.
No, for Final
No.
Fantasy.
Wait,
I have
when was
not played that
Ocarina
one.
mentioned?
Well, wait, no. Sate mentioned Ocarina of Time.
Oh,
Yeah.
let me hear it.
But I actually haven't played Final Fantasy 7. I have it, but I haven't not played it yet.
Oh,
Same.
okay. I guess I'll go with Ocarina.
But like, I mean, I'm spoiled for the game. I know everything. I know everything.
Well,
Well, I was going to say I'll use Ocarina of Time since I played that game, and I think that is a good game. But because people go into it with this expectation that it's going to be the best game ever, and it has to justify that, then they come out of it like, oh no, that game sucks. And I'm like,
yeah.
I think if you would have played that game with no expectations, there's no possible way you'd come to that conclusion. But because they expect it to be amazing, their expectations are way up here, and the actual reality was like over here in the middle. They're like, oh no, actually, it's terrible.
Sometimes
just
you also
think
have to put it into the context of the times, you know.
Well, yeah, but I just think it's crazy how the expectations alone can change that so much.
I mean, there have
Was it,
definitely
like-
been some games that people have told me are amazing masterpieces that everyone should play that I've played on the channel, and I've just been like, that was okay. Wasn't, all that crazy. I don't think I'll name it because I'm gonna piss people off if I do.
Yeah, you can say it. It's Super Metroid. No, I'm kidding.
No, it's not.
Let's see. But because honestly, I know like it's kind of interesting though, because honestly, I had a similar reaction to when I played like the 3DS version of Ocarina of Time. At least like when I was a kid, right? Whereas like it's tatted on all this. But I realize now it's kind of like my opinion of the game wasn't something that was like shaped by the game individually. It's not like I
Exactly.
played the game and immediately thought this is mid or whatever. I played the game and heard all of the surrounding praise around it, and me being the contrarian 13-year-old was like, this is mid.
Yeah.
But like, I'm obviously like now a bit more of a like it's a clearly it's a hugely influential game, which is why everyone talks about it, right? But then these it's really important to note that our opinions are very often not shaped in a vacuum with just us in the game, and have to be put in the context of all the opinions we hear on the internet, all the things we hear surrounding it. Either whether those opinions influence us in favor of them or against us is dependent on the person.
I'm
Yeah,
trying to think of
that,
another game that's like definitely great.
That
Go
kind of
ahead,
reminded.
Armania.
Oh, I was just about to say that reminded me of something that kind of changed my perspective a decent bit on one of the games that I was playing. Where, again, a game that shall not be named here, but I remember during the during the playthrough of this one game. So here's an example of how the opinions of others on, said game, or even opinions on other games, can shape your experience of that game. So this one game that I was playing, I was about halfway through, something like that, and it's like, all right, I'm digging this and stuff like that. And it was a game that I finally got around to playing because several people around my community had recommended it to me for so long. And I was like, all right, I'll indulge you, I'll get around to playing it. And I was playing it. And I remember that one person that was in the chat at the time, that was one of the people that, had told me for so long to play it. I started talking a little bit about Sly Cooper and how some of these segments were reminding me of some of the mini games in that, some of the like Bentley hacking mini games I was reminded of there. And I had said like, oh yeah, if you like this, you should totally try those out. Like the Sly trilogy is really good. It has that aspect, and it's just a really cool platform, and it actually has a pretty cool story. And I forget exactly what they said to me, but they were like, nah, I'm not taking advice or recommendations from a Sly Cooper fan. And it's like, what's that supposed to mean when I'm playing this because of your recommendation? Are you kidding me? And that got me like really pissed off, and like I shouldn't like this game that I was currently playing as much. And I feel like that kind of shaped my experience a little bit as well.
You started like kind of looking for issues with it, I'm guessing.
It's like I wanted to start looking for more issues because I took the time to play this game from like theirs and others' recommendations, and then like the things that I actually like and am passionate about was shit on. So it's like, really? Are you kidding me? Yeah. So it's like I started looking for things I had issues with more, and by the end, like I felt like the game was very mid and less than mid, and I wondered if that was like a factor that contributed towards that.
Yeah, it's like from that, it sounds like, and obviously those faults probably were like real in the game, but it's like not the fault of the game that you started like looking for them at that.
Yeah, I started.
Right. Well, yeah, because I was thinking that earlier with Ocarina of Time, like and this applies to any game really, but it's like, yeah, you're looking for the flaws, but it's like the positives are there too. Like there's everything else in between.
Like that's what I try to do in my Pokemon essays as well. It's like, modern Pokemon games, there's so much fault that I can find, but I also, try to find things that I can genuinely praise, best I can.
Because there was this one video essay I watched a while ago, like some years ago. I still remember it to this day. This guy who was playing Ocarina of Time, and obviously he didn't like the game, right? Which is fine. But it was like he was going in on every little flaw that the game had, which, okay. But then it seemed like he was hesitant to praise it for anything. Like the music, like everyone loves Ocarina of Time's music, right? It's amazing. But like bro was like, it's pretty good, I guess. So, like he barely even wanted to say that much about it. And I'm like, bro, the game has positives. Like, yeah, it's overrated. It's not as great as people say, but you can't go into it with this mindset that, okay, if it's the greatest, then it should have no flaws, and I just don't need to point out any positives. It's like, no. But people will do that with a lot of great games, but they're just like, every little flaw stings that much more when you expect it to be pretty much perfect.
It's actually kind of interesting because I've seen like kind of a common thing with like some of these like game, and not just games, but like general media, but like like in this case talking about games that like get very big fan bases and very vocal fan bases very quickly. Like I remember Undertale was kind of a thing.
That was literally the game I was right about to say when you said that.
Like,
and people
like
harassing
Undertale,
content creators like, you have to play this way.
Let's see. Well, honestly, like in a lot of different areas of this, whereas like it started off small, but then it grew rapidly. It grew like to an insane degree.
Oh yeah.
And then like I remember because I think I played the game on that initial like semi-initial upswing. I really enjoyed the game. Fantastic. It's a fantastic game.
Oh yeah.
But then they kind of like after a while, it kind of got to a point of like the opposite effect started to occur, where people kind of got tired of it, and people just started kind of pointing out, oh, it's not that good, or it's like there's like this shift in opinion that started happening as a result of the initial upswing and positivity for it. And then the content creator aspect, you can probably speak to, Harmonic.
Well, I was just about to say that kind of relates to something that Satan and I were talking about during a previous one of these podcasts with things like Breath of the Wild, where it initially comes out and it's like 10 out of 10 masterpiece, but then like years down the line, people start being like, maybe these aspects here aren't that great, like weapons constantly breaking, and the weirdness with the disconnected story and stuff like that. But people don't really want to voice that initially.
Yeah, because I was thinking of maybe we can have a discussion on this just as a topic at some point. But like
Yeah.
when a game is like hyped up or anything, I don't want to just say games. Like any media, any movie is like hyped up, and people are really excited for it. Like let's say Marvel movies. When a Marvel thing first comes out, nobody wants to say anything negative. Like you're not allowed to say anything negative.
Well, at least
And-
maybe Endgame and before that. Nowadays, it's
Yeah.
everyone's
Like,
a lot
this
more
is-
open about
not
negative
these days.
things.
No, legit. This is legit another example of it, where it's like it's kind of gotten. It's like enough time has passed where now we're starting to see the pendulum swing back in the other direction.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like because people they don't want to say anything negative at first. Once enough time passes that the hype dies down, then all the negativity comes out, and like it's so much worse than it would have been if they just got to say what they wanted to say at the beginning.
Yeah.
Because now it's like there's like a pent up anger to it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of scrutiny that's taken to these things that just wasn't when they first came out. I feel like some of the more like older Marvel movies. I was hesitant about saying older because it's not like they're that much older, but at the beginning of the MCU, things like Iron Man 2, where it's like initially coming out, it's like, oh my goodness, this is amazing, but now people are like, that movie sucks.
Yeah, and so many, even with Undertale, so many of the flaws that people point out, it's like you would have never fixated on this if not for the community, if not for your resentment of the community.
Mm,
Yeah, which is
yeah.
it's kind of like people
It's-
want to
Are you cut out?
dislike the game,
Oh,
and the
yeah.
reasoning follows after. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah, people want to dislike the game, and then the reasoning why follows after that, rather
Yeah.
than
Or,
the other way around.
Or yeah, with the case with
Exactly.
Undertale, or even the case where, if my favorite games are being shit on there. Both those cases where it's like, you might want to try to find the flaws because of the community and be like, this is not the masterpiece that you're making out to be, here's the proof why. Just be like, no, screw you,
Yeah, it's more of a personal thing. It's like the game is not at that point. The game is just a byproduct. It's like it's a medium by which we argue with other people rather than it being the
That's a
actual
good way to
focus,
put it.
focal
That's
point.
funny. Yeah, that's actually, I think that's exactly right. They just literally want to argue, and it's like the game is how you're gonna do it.
I have people that have, tried to make me their number one enemy because of my Pokemon essays, which I find really funny.
Yeah, I've seen. You're always arguing with them on Twitter and then YouTube comments.
No, the people that hate me the most have blocked me on Twitter, but yet other people have told me have continued to make memes bashing me to this day, which I find really funny.
Yeah, some of the people in VGLS were like, we were like, damn, they're jumping Harmony on Twitter. What the hell? Like,
Yeah.
we were trying to defend you a little bit, but there was there's nothing we could really do.
That's how I found out about that one situation. There was from the retweet of, somebody that just really, really, it's funny. Of all the things in that one video essay, it was the story rewrite. Literally, Pokemon fan fiction is the thing that there was the most issue of, but which I found really funny there. But as on the topic of it being a medium to argue, I responded to that being like, I'm always open to talk about these things. You could have just reached out to me if you wanted to discuss something about my content, but it seems like you didn't want to have a discussion. You wanted to have a spectacle. You wanted to have a show. Someone to point a finger at, essentially. And I feel like this whole medium to argue and finding flaws in things does stem from that a lot of the time. Like that whole group of people that completely despised my story rewrite with everything they had. I don't feel like is because the story rewrite is so bad, but because I was, saying that here's a potential counter option to a story that they loved and thought was perfect, and how dare I propose something different because a story that was already in the game was perfect and doesn't.
Or
need to change.
even because you're over here like pointing out the flaws in the story. Now they're looking for every little flaw in your story.
Yeah, it could well be that.
Hmm.
Turning into a medium to argue, affecting one's enjoyment of something. And it makes you wonder, what would the experience had been had they never seen the story of the game, never experienced it themselves, and then just seen that rewrite, and then seen the in-game story rather than the other way around.
Yeah, and
shaping
that's
one's
the expectation
that
thing.
way.
Exactly. But I wanted to talk about kind of the inverse too, because I think the opposite happens a lot, where you go into a game that's supposed to be really bad or something you've never heard of, and then you play it and it's actually not that bad.
Yo, that was
And then you're
Snake's
like,
Revenge.
Okay. And it's actually like and then you're like, oh no, this is actually a great game. You kind of overcorrect and say, oh
Yeah.
no, actually this is amazing. But I can't really think of an example. Maybe you guys.
Actually, I got one. Although this is like in a different way, but like Sonic 06, for example.
Oh,
where like
yeah. Well, Sonic
so-
games in general. That's great. Yeah.
Well, I think, but I'm going to use 06 just in particular because it's like it's very notorious among a lot of people just for how for just whether it be buggy, glitchy, etc., etc., right?
Mhm.
But yet, despite that, I feel as though it's gotten a very like particular like and really passionate like fan base for the game in particular, especially amongst like speedrunners in particular. Just because like even like they have like it's like because obviously there are all these like bugs and glitches and stuff, but yet that is like a positive for like for the speedrunning community because like all right, we have so much stuff we can do with this now.
Yeah.
It's just
it's a game that's kept alive today through that. It makes you wonder if it was like a completely stable, functional video game, if it would have like faded into obscurity by now. But in terms of video game and internet culture, it still has a strong place. Whereas other Sonic games that are a lot more stable since then have kind of faded into more obscurity. Whereas Sonic 06 is one of the still most iconic ones.
Iconic for the worst reasons.
Those speedruns are so fun to watch, I will say. They're so cool.
I haven't seen one.
Oh, I do recommend it.
I know Lazy Zach speedruns that game, so maybe I'll watch one of his streams. But even with Sonic games in general, like people go into it expecting it to be terrible, and they play it and like, oh no, this is actually okay. But because their expectations were so low, every little thing that the game did well actually seemed a lot better. So like, oh no, this is actually a really good game. Like people are doing that with Sonic Unleashed and what else?
I'm gonna scroll through my playthroughs that I've done here to see if I can, recap my mind. Be like, is there any other cases of that for me?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because like, I remember one game I really liked as a kid, but this is before like, really, like this is before social media was really as much a thing. But like playing Sonic and the Black Knight on release, I had so much fun with it actually. Now I can look at it, it's like, okay, it's got its fair share of problems, but like without any of those expectations, I had like a lot of fun with the game. I am curious to see, like I haven't like gone back and played it since then, right? So I'm curious how that would change now. But like, yeah, and we find that like there are a lot of games too, and honestly, just a lot of 3D Sonic games in general. I really enjoyed growing up a lot. It was actually the 2D Sonic games where like I didn't have as much of a personal connection to, and didn't really play them as much, with the exception of like the Sonic Rush games.
Wait, so did you like Sonic Adventure 2?
I like Sonic Adventure 2, yeah.
My goat. That's my favorite one.
Yeah. I preferred Sonic Adventure 1 though. I preferred 1.
That one's great too. I love that one too.
Yeah. Like for me, I love the overworld movement. I missed that in 2. That was literally the only reason.
That's fair. Yeah. It was a lot more disconnected.
But also, like 2's still a good game.
Also, scrolling through my playthroughs that I've done here, I have one example here of going in with different expectations for games, but it wasn't because people said that it was a bad game, but rather because of the game that I had played prior to it. So, a few years ago, I did this thing called Mad Lad May, where some of the people that had been like the most crazy generous around the channel, I would do like a full playthrough of. And Guzma requested Tales of Vesperia from 2008, which I'd heard a bunch of great things about from him, and everyone was saying all these great things online. And there was definitely some really fascinating aspects. Like I found the story fascinating in some places, pretty hard to follow in a lot of places, and I found myself getting kind of confused. This is a game that came out in 2008 originally, and the gameplay I found like really clunky and frustrating at times, and I found it up being a lot more frustrated towards the end than having enjoyment and stuff. It's still one of those games I'm really glad that I played and got through, because I got to see like what an impact it had on the industry, and how many JRPGs from later years I'd played where it's like, oh, did they borrow these ideas from Tales of Vesperia? So, it's one of those games that I'm still very glad that I played, even if it got kind of frustrating. They were very glad to have the experience. But, playing it itself, I was a bit more frustrated than anything most of the time. But coming out the following year was the new Tales of game, Tales of Arise. And, from the trailers and stuff like that, it looked really cool and stuff, but I was like, after the clunkiness and weirdness of Tales of Vesperia, do I want to get it? I mean, I guess I'd be skipping a lot of games, so like the series might have progressed a whole lot gameplay-wise from there. But I went in with these kind of low expectations from my frustrating experience that I had with that gameplay, and I played Tales of Arise, and I thought it was great. That game slapped. I had a lot of enjoyment with that, and it was also very different from Vesperia gameplay-wise. But Vesperia was like my frame of reference that I went into this with, and part of me was wondering like, should I really pick up Arise? But I did. I really liked it. It was a whole lot of fun, and it was great. But now the more recent Tales of game that I've gone to playing is Symphonia on and off with friends,
Okay.
and that's back to like, all right, it's super clunky, but it's fun because I'm playing with other people, you know.
So I'm curious, when you went to Arise, like, did you like, what kind of mindset did you have? Were you like, essentially, because obviously you probably try to go with the clean slate, but were you kind of like eyes peeled for like the negatives and for like the Vesperia
Yeah,
like things that you didn't like?
I think it was eyes peeled for things like the two things would have been like potential gameplay clunkiness and the story not really making sense or being hard to follow. Like there were definitely some cases in Arise where I had a bit of difficulty staying on top of like all the lore and backstory and how everything fits together, like figuring that all out. And with Vesperia, it felt like it jumped between plot points a whole lot more and I was so confused as to what was going on a lot of the time. Like I still, there's still a couple parts that I know exactly where they are in the series where I just had laughing fits of what's even going on. Like I still distinctly remember this, like, yeah, in Vesperia. I don't remember what his name was, but I distinctly remember this really big round boss guy that wore this red coat that out of his pocket he pulled like an ancient blade saw from Breath of the Wild that looked like the spinning axe thing. I was like, where the heck did he get that from? And then he mounted it like a witch on a broom and then flew away. And I was like, what is happening? You know?
It's been a while since I played Vesperia.
But yeah, it definitely helped me enjoy Arise a lot more when I was like, wow, this is pretty good. And in terms of reviews and stuff like that, I saw a lot of people online saying like, yeah, it's okay. You know, it's pretty good. It's not anything super amazing. But I thought it was great, you know? And it makes me wonder if like my prior experience helped shape that or what.
Maybe.
Also, I like going down the route of like the series-based expectations, because actually the most recent example I find is there's been a lot of discourse around Final Fantasy 16, because it's a pretty big departure for the series in terms of like it's very action oriented. It's very Devil May Cry-esque. In fact, I think the gameplay person from Devil May Cry is like worked on the game. And for a lot of people that liked some more of the older Final Fantasy games, especially like people that like some of the older turn-based ones, or like even like 15 and 13. It's like that. It's kind of like this is like this. They would be like, this doesn't feel like a Final Fantasy game. This doesn't feel right. And
I saw that with Breath of the Wild for Zelda. It doesn't feel like a Zelda game.
Yeah,
exactly.
That happens a lot where people say, "Oh, it's a good game, but it's not a good series game." Yeah.
It's like people look more for the flaws, or just for things to not like about it because it doesn't fit what they like about the series.
Just because it's any kind of departure.
I also want to say there's also the opposite effect with some games. So some games are like, this is a good game, but not a good X game. But there's also the opposite effect in some cases where it's like, this is a good X game, but not a good video game.
What's an example? I can't even think of one.
Pokemon.
Okay. Oh,
Like,
you're talking about Scarlet and Violet. It's a good Pokemon game,
but not a good video game.
That's I guess. But
I'm not sure if I've seen that much of people say that much about it. Maybe, I'm not sure.
That's the way that I feel about it, like going in with a little bit more of a critical lens there. But you know, a lot of it is because it's such a departure from the regular Pokemon formula. It's like, wow, thank goodness they took a step in, you know, a new direction, even though there's been countless video games that have done it so much better. Because it took a step in that direction, I'm gonna put it on a pedestal.
But even going with series expectations, you guys know I'm a pretty big fan of Metroid. The first one I played was Metroid Fusion. That one's my favorite one. I went into it thinking I wasn't gonna like it because the only other Metroid games I played were Metroid 1 on the NES, which is an NES game, and Metroid Prime 2, which I didn't really like.
Interesting.
So I went into Metroid Fusion thinking I'm probably not gonna really like this, but whatever, I'm bored, and I ended up loving it. It's one of my favorite games ever. I was just at every turn I was like, wow, this is so good. But if you go listen to Metroid fans talk about it, they're like, yeah, it's okay, it's pretty good. It's not really what we were hoping for. I'm like, what? This game did so well, but I found out it's because it's so different from the previous game, Super Metroid, which is like the holy grail of the series. And people love that game because it's so open and free. Pretty much at any time, you can go anywhere you want if you're good enough. You can literally, you guys know Ridley's like one of the final bosses. You can literally fight. You can fight him first if you want.
Yeah.
If you can get to him, and it's like Metroid Fusion is not that at all. It's very linear. You are forced down a certain path. You're restricted to go this way at this time, and it makes sense in the lore. Like that's explained. It's because you've like basically been demoted, so to speak. So
it also has more of that horror vibe. I know.
Yeah. It's more of a horror game, which is why Dread continued that. But my point is, like, I wonder if I played Super Metroid first and then played Fusion, if I would have felt the same way about it. I don't know if I would have loved it as much.
You also basically described me with Skyward Sword being the first Zelda game that I gave a proper chance to, and I was like, wow, this is amazing, and then later heard people being like, oh yeah, that's a pretty crappy one, Skyward Sword sucks, and I was like, wait, what? Similar experience there.
Honestly, a similar vibe. I said like the first Zelda games I really put a bunch of time into were the DS ones. Phantom Hourglass, the Spirit Tracks, and a lot of the common sentiment is very similar. They're like, people don't really like them as much, but I love those games because those were some of my first.
And I think that's because but people will look at the game as being part of a series, as being a sequel. Like, okay, I'm playing Super Metroid. I want Fusion to be more of Super Metroid. I played in Zelda's case, it's kind of the opposite. I played Twilight Princess. I want Skyward Sword to be something a little bit different, please.
Yeah.
It's like with the new Super Mario Bros. U games, because I think Super Mario Bros. U is kind of objectively the quote-unquote best game in the series, but like it doesn't do anything new at all. So if you played the other ones before that and then played U, you'd think the game's mid. But if you played U first because you haven't seen any of this stuff before, then it's like, oh, this is amazing. This is the best game.
Yeah, could well be. I mean, whenever I cover things on my channel, I try to do them in order so I see the natural progression. And plus, I figure if I play one of the later games and then I decide that I want to play one of the earlier ones, one, might not make as much sense story-wise, and two, like, I'd be giving myself potentially a worse experience. So that's why I'm willing to go like pretty far back for some series. Is why I started with like OG Metal Gear, for example.
That's exactly why I wanted you to play Metal Gear Solid first instead of starting with 3. That's exactly why.
Oh, well, I also looked it up and asked like what makes the most sense story-wise. Yeah, timeline-wise, 3 would be first, but apparently, you know, they make references to one another like that came out previously because they are expected to be played in the order that they release. So yeah, I just decided I'm gonna play these in release order and go like right from the beginning and do like the natural progression. So like when I played the first Metal Gear Solid game, for example, you know, its gameplay definitely had some aspects that haven't aged all that well, where it's like, oh, that's pretty clunky and weird and stuff. But from my frame of reference being the retro ones, it's like, whoa, so cool, it's 3D, you know?
Yeah.
I got that spirits there.
But I guess my ultimate point is that expectations will just completely change how you experience the game.
Yeah.
Just
like
purely because you're going into it expecting it to be like the rest of the games in the series, but just because it's different, you automatically see that as a flaw. Like what Ferm was saying with Final Fantasy 16.
Or like if I had gone on to first play something like Metal Gear Solid 5 or even the remake of 3 coming out or something like that, and then went back to play Metal Gear Solid or even the retro Metal Gear games, probably would have been like, I cannot stand this, not having the quality of life changes that the later games had and like the gameplay stuff that I'm used to. All this weird clunkiness, I can't deal with this. But going into it from the ground up, from the very beginning, it's like, all right, I'm seeing the progression here. Things are getting better and better each time. Great, you know?
But the only other thing I wanted to talk about with this was because I feel like a lot of people, they'll play a game that they've never heard of before, that no one's ever heard talk about, and if they find it and they love it, then they feel like they're the one who found that game, so they overrate the hell out of it, acting like it's a masterpiece, when really it's just pretty good. And that's like, I feel like there's a lot of that because they went into it with no expectations, and hearing nobody ever talk about it, it's like, oh, I found this masterpiece. This is my masterpiece right here.
This is my game. Hands off.
Yeah, so they kind of overrate it a little bit. You guys,
maybe a bit of my experience. And for me personally, actually, because it's actually funny that you mentioned Tales series, Harmonia, because I remember just going into a GameStop when I was like 13 or something, and just randomly like came across Tales of the Abyss for 3DS in the shop. Never heard of the Tales of series before. Never really played a JRPG like it before. Picked it up, absolutely loved it.
Yeah,
and then
it's your
went on
favorite
to
game,
some
right?
of the rest of it. It is still my favorite game, but I think that's like part of that might be similar to kind of what you're describing, where it's like I had never seen this, I had never heard anyone else talk about it. And it's like, and I ended up really, really liking the game. I still think it is a bit, but I think part of like I was definitely less, and I definitely was less likely to like admit some of the flaws that have like my head. And now it's like I can totally look at the game now and be like, okay, there's some things that don't quite hold up, whether it be narratively or gameplay wise. I knew it was always a little bit. It's it's a PS2 game, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, but still like I can differentiate best from favorite game. It's my favorite game. I'm not gonna say it's like the best game of all time.
Yeah.
But yeah, there is definitely the kind of fun of discovery. Like the closest situation that I can think of is, well, I guess there's a couple situations, like when I first got my PlayStation 2 and the game that happened to come with it was Sly Cooper. I ended up getting into that. But the thing that actually first comes to mind is when I was, this was what, like 2010, something like that, that I had a cousin that was visiting from the next province over. I was over at my grandparents' place, and she introduced me to this little game that she was trying out that was still like in beta and stuff, but she was having a lot of fun with, and decides to introduce me to this little game called Minecraft. I believe it was in like beta 1.5 or something like that at the time. And I'd never heard of this video game before. And, she introduced me to that, and I started playing it. I was like, whoa, this is a really cool game,
Lo and behold, is it the best-selling game of all time?
I think it is.
I think so, yeah.
Either that or
Sounds about
Tetris. I'm fairly certain it's Minecraft, though. I think Tetris might be second.
Minecraft, GTA 5, Tetris, and then Wii Sports.
Oh, you
Makes
looked it up?
sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm surprised Tetris isn't number 1 anymore. Damn.
And Minecraft is more than double.
Holy shit.
Yeah, Minecraft is pretty darn big.
How many has Minecraft sold?
238 million from what it says here.
Yeah.
But it still didn't
Yeah,
make
I
as
guess
much as
we just
Morpheus at
had-
the box office.
Well, yeah, not even close. Come on. But yeah, I guess we just kind of had 3 sort of different discussions in a way, which I
But they
still
all-
honestly really like.
Yeah, and they all play into overall enjoyment of a game and your play experience.
And things that can factor in that come from outside the game that will play into your experience.
Yeah.
That's very true.
Spoilers,
I
expectations.
don't know if we have a single word for that though.
Game enjoyment? I don't know.
I'm just gonna say expectations. That's what I'm gonna put on the thumbnail. Anyway,
That.
but yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. I think we covered all the main bases because each of us came into this with like our own topic.
Yeah. That's
for
why I was
Fermata, it
confused before we started, being like, wait, what's the actual
That's
topic that we're
fine.
talking about? But all
No,
relates
because
to
it worked out
enjoyment in
perfectly.
games, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, Fermata, spoilers. For me, it was expectations, and Harmonia was like, what, just getting older and how that changes your
I
perspective.
think that was both of us. I think
As-
we both wanted to kind of talk about that a bit.
Yeah, as well as like
True.
tension, inevitability, and stuff. And we also talked about spoilers at the beginning and all that.
Yeah, I mean, that was honestly really cool. But I think that's pretty much it. Harmonia, you want to sign us off?
Sure, I can do. So, appreciate everyone who tuned in to another discussion here that, as was mentioned there, got through a whole lot of different topics. Next time, we're going to bring on a special guest who's actually a former president that Sate's going to bring on.
Okay, bruh. He's doing this because last time when we ended the last podcast, I said next time we're gonna bring on a special guest, and he forgot I was talking about you, so he thought I just meant he was gonna have to get somebody to come on the show out of nowhere.
Yeah, put that goal onto my shoulders there.
It's fine. Next time you can just bring me on, but I'll be wearing a mustache.
Oh yeah, and nothing will be different because we can't even see you.
Yeah.
Don't
Yeah.
worry about that little detail.
Yeah, just use a voice changer or something like that.
Yeah, I mean,
And-
that's what you. That's
For-
what, yeah.
For real, it is possible that we might well have some other content creators coming on that might well be interested. So we'll see how things work out. We're not quite sure what next topic we might have, but we do have a list that we've put together of things that would be interesting to talk about. So, we have no shortage of things that we could potentially talk about. But we'll figure out what
Well,
happens there.
because I came up with the first 2 topics, and Fermata's the guest. He sort of picked this one. So
Yeah.
next time, Harmonia, how about you pick?
Okay, well, I could well do. have things that I wouldn't mind talking about. Likewise, Save's
Yeah.
favorite games are trash.
Okay, that's just a lie. My favorite games are actually the best ever made.
Okay, I see.
Like my favorite game is actually the best game of all time. If you guys didn't know,
Is that so?
I have good taste, and everyone else has garbage taste.
that's exactly like you just understand me perfectly.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah, but
thanks for
have-
watching. Oh,
Thanks for having me on, guys. I really have
yeah,
fun.
no,
Yeah.
we should probably thank, I guess, for coming on, huh?
Yeah,
thanks for
I
coming on.
appreciate you coming on,
Fermata.
They don't like me.
And we'll
Nah,
be
this
glad.
is really cool.
We'll be glad to have you on again.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Thanks, y'all.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is pretty much what I envisioned us doing in the first place. In the beginning, we just had to kind of figure things out a little bit first.
Yeah. Now we've got a little bit of our footing, figuring out what's going on here, and we have a bit of direction for where this series is going. I feel like, you know.
Mhm.
Oh yeah. Until we
Yeah.
figure out whatever the heck is going on next time, I suppose. Appreciate everyone who tuned into this, and yeah, see you later.
Bye.
Bye.